In this video, we're going to take a look at probability. In general, the formula for calculating the probability of something happening is given by the probability of an event. What I mean by an event is something happening, something that I want happening. So the probability of a certain outcome is given by the number of the favorable outcomes over the number of total outcomes. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of what this means. So, for example, I roll a dice. Okay. Generally, I can roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6 on a pair of dice. Let's say that I need to roll above a 3. Okay. So the probability of the event, and what I mean by the event is getting a number above 3, is given by, well, let's see, if I roll a 4, it's above a 3, roll a 5, it's above a 3, and roll a 6, it's above 3. 3 is not above 3, 3 is equal to 3. So the number of outcomes I want, there's 3 possible outcomes. I can roll a 4, 5, or a 6. But that's out of the total outcomes. Well, the total outcomes are the fact that I could roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or 6. So I have 6 possible outcomes. So the probability of rolling above a 3 is a 1 out of 2 chance. It can also be written as a 0.5, okay, as 1/2. Or I can change this into the fact that I have a 50% chance. Most times, probability is given as the percentage. It's a 50% chance of something happening. So rolling a dice is one kind of good example. Okay. Another example, let's look at playing cards. If I look at cards, there are 52 cards in a deck. Let's say in a particular game, if you get an ace or a king, you win. So let's say the probability of getting an ace or a king, the probability of this event, is given by the fact that, well, there's 4 suits, so there's 4 aces and 4 kings. If I draw 1 card. So I have 8 total cards that would give me what I want. So I have an 8 out of the total of 52 cards, an 8 out of 52 chance of getting what I want. So if I go through then and say, okay, well, if I reduce that, they're both divisible by 2. So it would be a 4 out of 26. Divisible by 2 again, a 2 out of 13 chance of getting what I want. If I turn that into a decimal, it's going to be 0.153846, okay, on and on. In other words, it's about a 15.4% chance of getting what I want. Okay. So these are examples of probability. Sometimes, what's good to keep in mind is what's called the complement of a probability. The complement of a probability, if something complements something, it adds to it, okay? Kind of makes up for what's lacking. So, the complement of a certain probability is what the probability does not. It includes the outcomes we don't want. So it's anything except the event itself. Okay. Why is the complement important? The important thing is that the probability of the event, so the chances of something happening, plus the probability of the complement need to add up to 1, which is basically 100%. So basically, it makes sense because if you think about it in terms of the probability of getting what I want added to the probability of what I don't want, well, it's going to give you the total amount of outcomes. So let's go back to the dice, for example. Let's say I want to know what the probability of rolling anything higher than a 1. Okay. So in this case, my probability would be a 2, a 3, a 4, 5, or a 6. So I have 5 out of 6 outcomes. Well, one thing you can think of is probably of not rolling higher than a 1. Okay. In other words, I'm saying what is the probability of rolling a 1? Well, it's a 1 out of 6 chance. Well, what's 5, 6 plus 1, 6? It's going to add up to 6, 6. Okay, in other words, 100%. Sometimes, occasionally, we'll also leave it as a fraction, okay, the probability, and that's sometimes always acceptable, especially if it doesn't come out evenly, like 5, 6 isn't going to come out evenly, so sometimes we say, oh, it's a 5 out of 6 chance of getting this. That's happening. Now, let's say that we are rolling 2 dice. Okay. Or 2 die. In this case, there's actually 36 possible outcomes. Okay. I get 6 possible outcomes from the first dice, times 6 possible for the second dice, giving you a total of 36 possible outcomes. I want to know what's the probability of rolling higher than 3. Okay. So one way of approaching this is to say, okay, what's the chances of getting a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, 8, 9, 10, okay, all the way up through 12. You're going to be listing off a lot of possibilities in that case. If I use this idea of the complement, what I'm able to do is what's the probability of getting a 2 or a 3. So in other words, I can roll a 1 and a 1, I can roll a 1 and a 2, or I can roll a 2 and a 1. Okay, keep in mind the 2 dice are different. These are the 3 ways that I can get 3. Everything else will be higher. So if I know there's 36 possible outcomes, the probability of getting a 2 or a 3 is given by 3 out of the 36 outcomes. In other words, a 1 out of 12 chance. What the means is that the probability of the event that I want, probability of something higher than 3, is given by the complement of 1 out of 12. Well, if 1 out of 12 is a 2 or 3, that means 11 out of the 12 are higher than 3. So what we need to begin thinking of is sometimes with probability, it's easier to figure out what something isn't than to figure out what something is. So sometimes we figure out what something's not, what something isn't, and then use that information to figure out what it is, using this idea that the probability of what I don't want happening and the probability of what I do want to have happening needs to add up to 100% or needs to add up to 1. So that's something always kind of to keep in mind. So hopefully this has been a good introduction. Hopefully it's built on what you've already learned in science. And looking forward to kind of this unit on probability.